Welcome to the Queen Divas, Queens of Fitness podcast. Join your hosts, three-time WBFF world champions and WBFF royalty, Alicia Gowans and Stephanie Ayala McHugh, as we explore all things female health, training, competing, mindset, and living the fitness life every day.
So welcome to episode 4 of the Queen Divas Fitness podcast. I'm super excited to jump on board, having missed you, Stephanie, last week.
Oh, yes, I missed you too. It felt like a little weird now. I'm getting used to these. I
know, me too. I was missing something. There's a piece of my week gone. And forgive us, everyone, we've been laughing before we came on to this that I'm not necessarily the most tech savvy. I mean, I go okay, but I'm struggling today trying to make sure that I'm recording and doing everything right because I am sans Christos.
Yeah, you guys know Crystal. If anybody has met Crystal, behind the scenes guy, you know,
OCD,
a lot of
all over everything,
all the tech, all the technology. I mean, we're faces, okay? We really like to talk and we like to obviously communicate with one another.
Talking heads, and he's all the chords that come in between, right?
And Carrie's the same. I feel the same. Like Kim and Carrie, right? Like just connect so much. So for those that don't know, Carrie is my husband and Christos is hers. So it's soon to be, because that is definitely in the works.
The men behind the scenes, right? The men behind the talking heads. How funny.
Yeah.
And as you can see by my background today, people, this is my very first on the road recording, and there's going to be many of these for both of us because, you know, as everyone is aware, we have pretty crazy, hectic schedules that see us gallivanting across the countryside and the globe.
So where are you right now, Allie? Where are you?
So at the moment I'm in Melbourne, and I am in the basement, and Kerry would love this place, of the most amazing garage that has stupid, ridiculous $1 million vehicles everywhere. It's pretty phenomenal. If anyone's seen my recordings in my studios, this has been my office every morning for the last week and a bit. So you would have seen me, and no, I'm not just trying to, you know, be flash and show off with an expensive car like some influencer in the background. I'm legitimately just standing in the middle of like a million of these things. So it's like they're in the background no matter where I go. I've thought about that a couple of times. I've been posting and I'm like, man, I look like such a one of those wannabe influencers. But,
wait, so are you in an Airbnb? Is this Airbnb?
No, this is actually a really good friend of the family who own this whole, they're Australia's largest or second largest, I think, retailer of secondhand vehicles, but they do all the prestige, high end, like I'm talking the
exotic cars,
big dollar exotic cars. Like, you know, there is actually a couple of $1 million car sitting up there. Like, it's crazy. So I'm like, I don't even go to India. I'm like, I don't want to breathe on you because I can't afford you. I can't even afford one payment on you. Like, that's crazy.
Hey, we could dream though. We could dream. I think that those are good
motivation.
Absolutely. I think being surrounded around it should get some maybe new cars in the works that you're going to want in the future.
Look, it gives Christos way too many ideas. And I'm like, look, we're about the family car right now. So let's just not go there just yet.
So Carrie's trying to upgrade to a Q8, so I hear you. I mean, I understand.
So I guess because we have missed last week, I said to Steph when we were offline bantering that we would start the session with our ritual of the, you know, highlight of the week, gratitude of the week, direction of the week. But instead of just doing for this week, we'll also just give just a recap on the highlight of the week that was, seeing as we've missed this time with one another. So Steph, what was your highlight of last week? And I'm pretty sure it's probably going to be the Super Bowl, but if not, enlighten me.
You know, it's funny, you know, I grew up, you know, obviously, you know, being a sports fanatic, but football was never something that I had a team that I felt connected with because I was a Raiders person. I mean, you have to, any Raiders lovers or fans out there, no, it's been a struggle. It's been a really hard, long struggle for our team. And being from LA, you know, I think that's just a pretty typical type of bandwagon. And I don't want to say bandwagon because I wasn't a football fanatic until Carrie came along. And I mean, he is probably the biggest, and I mean that. I don't think I've met anybody else in the world that is a bigger football fanatic than him. So he definitely converted me over into, you know, being more current with football. But no, I didn't watch it. I was working. Sundays are my busiest days, working with my clients' plans, trying to make sure everything's on point for the week. So I was actually glued in front of the computer on that day. I did, you know, get the highlights from Carrie running into the office and letting me know what Tom Brady was doing. But yeah, no, it was honestly not the Super Bowl. It was my Costco grocery haul.
Awesome.
Yeah, that was honestly the highlight of my week for anybody that's cooped up in the house and just trains from home, works from home. Being able to go out, whether if that's a dinner date or a grocery haul, like
Costco haul.
Costco was definitely the highlight of the week, and it's I guess it's pretty miraculous what happens when you go to Costco, because you're doing wholesale, right? Like you're buying so many things at once, so the price could get pretty hefty pretty easy. But then you run into other things, like we walked out with the freaking 75-inch TV. Like, who does that? Like, come on. Like, but it was because of the Super Bowl, actually.
So you go to Costco, you stock up on the goods. Kerry comes home with the Super Bowl session. I love it. That sounds so appropriate. And definitely
American.
Kerry. Yeah,
definitely American.
What was the highlight, or maybe a challenge you faced this week?
It was more so last week than this week. I feel so much better this week because last week was period week for me. And any female listening to this understands it is a struggle to, get your workouts in, be mentally positive, fight the fatigue. So it was more of like just really trying to get through it, trying to get through the week. And
I just put on my survival hat and hope for the best.
Yeah, it was just, more PMSing. Like it was just severe cramps. It was just one of those months that hit me a little harder than others. And I think that was why I kind of felt off the grid even, I just get more wrapped into, more of my errands, and I get really back to back. And social media is the last thing, honestly, on my totem pole, which is probably a bad thing. Is one of my things I need to move up the totem pole. But, on that week, I definitely felt I needed a little more recovery, which was needed. And this week I'm coming out of it. I feel so much better. I am starting to get, obviously my energy back, sleep as well. Obviously the PMS symptoms have subsided. So yeah, that was my struggle. And I think that's the same boat for a lot of women on a daily basis or monthly basis, right? 100%. Yeah. So what about you?
I love the fact that you actually raised that, because we're going to come back and loop back to this, because our whole topic of the conversation for today's podcast is around the difficult conversations, the things you find that are a struggle, some of the common pitfalls that we've had, some of our, listeners, and even our own, perhaps coaching clients or clients that have come to us that have had previous issues prior to us. We're going to delve into that. And, cycle discussions can be a really tough one for some people. So we'll touch on this later. But for me, highlight of my week last week, which was also double-edged sword, right? It was the pitfall. It was the thing that gave me no voice for the whole freaking week, was that, for everyone that's been tuning in knows I'm been doing acting in 2020 and hoping to obviously take this sort of, as just another feather in my cap, another thing that I do. My whole goal though with it is to move into something, sort of more TV and presentation orientation, right? But I'm a whatever girl. I'm open to whatever. I say yes to everything, and I'm just letting all the opportunities, fall where they may. So I said yes again to being called back to one of the big projects I was working on in 2020. It was another call, and then I got called back again actually on Tuesday. But we'd already left early morning Tuesday morning. So what had happened on Monday was I was 12 hours at set, didn't leave till after midnight. There was rain involved. It was a big scene, a really big scene, lots of takes, lots of angles being taken. And we had like this main sort of feature bit that was coming through. So we kept having to be pulled back through, no downtime, but you're wearing a mask the whole time. So you COVID tested every 2 days on set. So we were COVID. So I definitely didn't have COVID, even though when we were traveling to Melbourne, you could just see all these people looking at me like, this bitch.
You must have it.
because I'd have like a cough, or I'd have like, oh my God, it was so funny. And I felt so bad. You just have that little moment of I'm so embarrassed right now because I'm actually fucking coughing. And I shouldn't be embarrassed about coughing, but you do, because you just feel everyone looking at you, burning eyes, like, she's got the vid, people.
Look, I got a stare down. I was
my God.
Coughing, right? I had an itchy throat. Like right now I'm dealing with a lot of allergies. Yeah. And God forbid you sneeze or you cough, because
I know
give you the death stare. It is
the worst. So what happened was you're breathing in and out of this mask, and it's one of those ones that are the medical related, and it's carbon monoxide basically. They'll refresh you, but it's not always fast enough. And you just all of us in this one pod for the scene, we're all experiencing something. We're all starting to get itchy and scratchy, and by the end of the night, I sort of sent Christmas message, poor guy. He was already in bed fast asleep by the time I got home. I'm like, baby, I'm like, my throat's going. Anyway, woke up on the Tuesday morning. We only got 4 hours sleep. I'd had about 3 or 4 nights leading into that night where I'd had compromised sleep because I was running through end of semester exams for my postgrad. So, long days, long nights, study, a little bit of stress. And yeah, it just hit me. So I think being that little bit more exposed, lower immunity, just my whole throat went. And so I was not sick. There was no symptoms anywhere else, but I'd get this dry cough and this itchiness, and it lasted all week. And then literally I had no voice, guys. So we were due to do the podcast recording last Friday. I couldn't get on. I'm messaging Steph and Kerry going, guys, I'm out. I couldn't even do my coaching calls. I was honestly on struggle street. So anyway, got better. So that's great. I'm grateful for my health, and I'm grateful for the fact that I've got a voice and I can just blast everyone with my, constant non-stop chatter again. Poor bastards. I'm so sorry for everyone losing me. And the challenge of this week, actually, which is a flip side, because I take the positive in anything. I'm that annoying optimist. Glass is always half full, plenty of room to fill it with some more good shit. And, we're in Melbourne. It's been great. Nick's been doing fucking amazing.
Oh, how amazing though.
His match
on that
was his match not last night before last was just, it was ridiculous. It was so good. But you know what the media can be like? We had this just shitstorm where he's done his usual thing on the court, blasted out. And the irony of it is that they don't know the full story. They don't know what's going on, but they look at the box and they go, 1 + 1 = 5. It's got to be about her, and made this big deal about me in the media. And it had nothing to do with me. And it was just so funny because we all know what's going on. The people inside the unit.
The net, yes.
Yeah, we all know. So I just laughed it off. But I just got harassed for 2 days solid, calls and people wanting me to go on channels for interviews and all this kind of crap. And I'm like, I just ignored everyone because I'm of that mindset that
did they make something up that you're like a mistress or something? Or
no.
It
It was a typical Nick moment, and everything gets directed like at and toward the box. And there was a statement about a girlfriend component that they thought was about me because I was the only chick in there they thought could have been girlfriend of Christos. And they made this big thing about me and Christos. And then it got even funnier because then they start chasing us with the media, right? Christos does this thing where you know what Christos is like. So anyone that knows Christos knows this is a joke. But the media kept harassing him. So he turns around and goes, yeah, I'll give you an interview for $20,000, knowing that if he put out a ridiculous sum, they'd back off and just stop calling, right? Because he was getting harassed. Anyway, so then they did a big story about him being, who does he think he is, demanding 20 grand? Like, this is just what it's like. So again, you just laugh at it, right? And we just did. We just laughed at it. And we know what the go is. And anyone that knows Christos knows that he was just joking to get these people to stop calling him. But anyway, so we faced that. The positive side of it though was that, hey, look, you know what? It was a really great, there was some really great exposure that came out of it. Even though, because at the end of it all, Nick's like, you silly people, this was not about Christos or Ali at all. And so he did like a statement about it. And then we ended up having this really lovely article written all about my business and our coaching and our clients. And it was a really positive one. So this is where I kind of went, hey, it's one of those situations where even in challenge sometimes, as long as you face it with the right attitude and I think if you just don't take a lot of things to heart, right? You don't care about what other people are saying because it's all white noise. If you know what's going on and what's real and what's not, then I think at the end of the day, your response to something elicits the reaction. And I'm highlighting this for two reasons, because I think, it's relevant because it was a big part of our week, but I had a really positive outcome out of it. So I don't feel negative about it at all. But then also it's relevant because it shows that when you're in a situation where, feedback might be being given from the point of, a coaching relationship, it's your response to something and the way that you choose to receive that information that can dictate how the outcome comes out, right? It could be something that could be really beautiful and positive at the end of it if you receive it and then transmit back in the right way. So
so true.
I find that in situations, instead of just automatically taking something and feeling a certain thing about it and sitting inside of that feeling is a really great way to go, okay, well, the initial feeling might be this, but what else is there in here for me? And what's really great about this? And looking for, maybe the learning or something else in that process. And if you don't immediately respond and you don't emotionally react to something, and instead you allow, a little bit of time and space and an opportunity for growth inside of whatever that little moment of tension might be, I've always found personally in my experience that the outcomes are freaking amazing. And they're oftentimes, a really beautiful, positive end product. Even if sometimes there isn't a moment of challenge or self, even a bit of a self development process in it, where you've had to bite a tongue or not react, and or even if it's just that you've had to swallow a hard pill, that maybe you've done something wrong. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
so all these things I think loop in. So, and this is a situation that it's not even relevant to a coaching relationship per se, but it is relevant in the sense where it's indicative of how I've learned to deal with situations. And I think that is important as an athlete, as a, you know, partner, as a public profile, if that's what you are, or as a coach, right?
Yeah.
Being able to have these conversations and internal reflections are really important.
I think what you just said there was really important. You know, it's emotion that comes whenever you get anything said to you, whether if it was towards you, personal, might have not even been about you, but you took it to heart. You know, you took it to heart. It's personal to you. So there is some type of trigger points, which is actually one of the things that, you know, I think is what we're leading into, right? Like some of those topics that are so difficult to talk about. But it is an emotional thing. Like you react through emotion, but what you allow yourself to take a moment to really rethink and process, like you said, what actually is happening. How can I use this? You know, is it good for me? Does it service me? Then you can actually take it as constructive criticism in a way, right? Like, or actually use it to your advantage. In your case, obviously you came out with something that was obviously not true, but you still got exposure.
Actually an amazing outcome. And you know what was really lovely too, actually, it opened up dialogue even, you know, with Christos and I, with Nick, where, you know, like the minute that it all went down and happened, which we weren't even really sort of aware of it until after the game, you know, Nick's first thing was immediately messages me and Christos going, hey, you know, I really need you guys to know this was nothing at all. Like they've painted this picture and I don't want you guys getting upset. And Ali, I don't want you being upset or hurt by this because it wasn't about you. And I'm like, God, I love you. You know, like this.
So for our listeners, just sorry to cut you off, Ali, but for anybody that doesn't know, up from America's side, Nick, you know, just
my brother-in-law.
Yes,
my brother-in-law is Nick Kyrgios, the tennis player,
and he is
freaking amazing.
Tennis player.
he is freaking amazing. Like he's honestly the perfect blend of freakish talent and hard work.
A professional athlete that's worldwide. I think he's great.
Athlete, yeah. And you know, look, people want to stereotype him and box him, and I've known him since he was 17, gangly, not cool, not even in the top 200, I think at the time. And now, you know, he's the pin-up boy and the poster boy of tennis, and in most women's case, just poster boy for life. And,
so no, this is important for the listeners.
It is.
Don't know because I think in Australia, everybody knows who Nick is there. But not here. Yeah.
100%. Well, I think most people have heard something at some point because he's known as being a bad boy, but he's really not. He's an absolute sweetheart. And this is why, you know, I think again for our listeners, you know, it's just nice to know that the type of kid that he is, you know, his first thing was to reach out and message us and be like, hey, look, I really need you guys to know. And I really want Ali to know that this, you know, this wasn't about her. And I'm like, oh, you don't even need to say that to me. Like, I already know because A, I'm not a girlfriend. I haven't been for 3.5 years. But B, you know, like we're seeing him every day. We're in the house. I'm like, we stayed up. Christos and I were cooking him dinner after that match until 2 a.m. Like, yeah, I don't need that. I don't need that because I already know, you know, and this is where I was saying it's how you're receiving information. But again, this was just another perfect example of where that situation opened up this beautiful dialogue for, you know, just a really lovely transaction of what our relationship is, which is, you know, solid. Awesome. Yeah, and you know, super cute too, because the very next thing, the very next day, the first thing Neil does on the phone to me and Christos is, so I think November's going to be a nice month. And we're like, Christos goes, yeah, okay. For what, Mum? She's like, for the wedding.
That's where I'm headed. That's
I think it was that situation where she's like,
conversation is the wedding.
Oh, so funny. But you can clearly think that she's been thinking, man, she's not been the girlfriend for like forever. Where is this even gone, people? Like it was so funny. But again, look, it does open up platforms.
I know this is kind of off the topic, but what you were just saying there, a lot of people just think that you have to be married to be labeled as together, which yes, marriage is obviously part of it. But, you know, honestly, like you could be together and, you know, actually have a successful relationship. Yeah. It is a label, you know, it does. Yeah, I'm not saying marriage doesn't get better once you do get married, because it does. I didn't think it would, but it does. But I mean, at the same time, nothing really changed except, like I said, maybe more internally and knowing that connection might get even deeper. But like where you're at, like, and I'm watching
To be honest,
you guys are building up your empire, building up your careers, your businesses, and that's really what matters. And that's more than a freaking
oh my
downhouse
God, to be
payment,
completely honest with you, darling, like I feel like we're married. I feel like we've been married for 7 years.
Of course.
Fine. Who cares? Like, I really don't. And the irony of it is that former me, maybe a decade ago, would have felt, different about that situation. Would have been like, oh, well, my God, why are we not married? Like, what's wrong with us? What's wrong with you? Like, we should have done this by now.
Right.
I'm so not like that at all. It's such a very
society, though. It's not that.
We'll talk about that in a completely different podcast.
That's a different.
We can talk about that for an hour.
Podcast. Yeah.
But the context of this is just showing. If you remain in a space of, curiosity, if you remain in a space of, unattached to emotion, I think in any conversation that could be, trepidous, you can really have some great outcomes. So the reason that we're having this conversation is because, I think as coaches and as people even where we've been coached over the years, I think dealing with difficult conversations on a daily basis is just, it's commonplace for us. Yeah. We see a lot of the situations where people don't necessarily get the best out of themselves or their scenarios or their goals because they're not necessarily being open, right? And so, I thought this would be a really great topic for us to talk about because it's all of the things that you probably could and should or maybe don't know how to approach if you are struggling with some of these things in a coaching relationship or even in a close relationship, a partnership with someone that are important to get the most out of that relationship, right? So as coaches, every single coaching conversation is different, right? Different client, different context, different topic, every single time. So no two are the same, but there is still a similar blueprint for the things and the construct of those conversations that I think should be carried through no matter what, right? And for our listeners, we've had some really interesting topics raised. Forgive me, this bloody throat still. About the things that they find difficult. Now, Steph, have you had some of your listeners, sort of send through stuff that they were like, oh, what about this? What about this? What about this?
Yeah, you know what? It's funny. Like this is such a good topic just because I think we all have topics that are very sensitive to talk about. Mm-hmm. And depending on who it is that you're talking to, whether if it's a partner, your coach, your mother, it doesn't matter who it is. It's very hard sometimes to surface these things because what you're trying to do is dig up a lot of emotions, a lot of trigger points, like I was kind of getting at, is something may trigger you, something may surface a previous trauma, maybe something that was a bad habit. Like it's really difficult sometimes to be honest with yourself and talk to yourself and call yourself out. I think it's kind of really calling out your bullshit. Really, that's really what it comes down to, and trying to really cut out the lies that you tell yourself on a daily basis before you even talk to somebody else. It's what we tell ourselves. And that's really where that story first starts is what am I telling myself? And that lie then translates into what I'm believing. I'm starting to make myself believe this lie. And once you really break that first, you're able to then really communicate with somebody without defending yourself and thinking that the whole conversation is defense, right? Like, but no, but this is my excuse. So it's more about really trying to find what is it that I can't talk about that I feel uncomfortable really uncomfortable talking about, because that's the shit that you need to really dig up.
I think too, you just hit the nail on the head where you talked about, the but. To me, that's always an indication that there's no 90-10 going on. What I mean by 90-10, it's a principle that I like to use where I talk about it being 90% listening and listening to listen and listening to understand, not just hear, right? Like you got two ears. That's two versus one mouth. So you should be more time spent here, right? And it's about thinking when you're getting this information, not just, okay, well, she's attacking me or he's attacking me or this viewpoint's coming at me, instead going, okay, well, where does that sit against what I'm thinking? Why is that different to where I'm, sort of going with my view on this? Where's the disconnect? Or is there, a reason for this? And, trying, like I say, to understand. I always try to do that wherever I can, leading into the coaching component of a conversation. So I've got all of the information to equip myself to apply, what I think might help someone. but also because I just genuinely want to act with curiosity, as I said before, about what is it? What's actually going on? What are the real parameters for this? Is it actually physiological versus psychological? Is it mental? Is it emotional? Are there triggers going on? Is someone stopping themselves because of a limiting belief versus it's the food that they think? Like, whatever it is, right? That's the way that I'm approaching it. And I think you're so right, because how often do you have it with someone where they're, or you can see they're already like thinking about what to say back to you, not listening to anything that you're actually saying, or cutting off to drive home a point, but they're not really analyzing, you know, an opposing view, or perhaps even understanding why something might be being done, or not even maybe even asking the questions. So my first thing would be question, whether you are on the coachy end or you are the coach. Rather than driving home content, question, be curious, get in and about, and like treat someone, no matter how long you've been with them for as a partner or working with them for as a coach, like you've just met them, like you know fucking nothing about them, because whatever that situation's going on for them, which oftentimes, Steph, you know this, topic A will come up. Topic A is not even the problem. Topic A is what they're projecting it onto, but Z and Y over here are the things driving said A. So 100%. It's about going, all right, you're telling me this, and on the surface that looks right, but when I come over here and pull a thread and all this shit unravels in between, okay, we actually find out what's really going on is you've got an exam tomorrow, it's really fucking you up. You're not so sure you're going to do great at it, but you come over here and told me that it's about carbs. And you bloat.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Like I'm like looking bloated, but really it's your stress levels. It's your cortisol being really raised.
Or it's hormonal. It's like you were talking about, right? Cycle, and the cycle then makes. Okay, so has anyone here listening to this? And please, you know, think about this as I'm suggesting. And if you're not, for God's sakes, download an app and start bloody recording it. When you record your symptoms on your cycle is a big thing. Females talking to coaches. If you are not comfortable talking about your cycle, your bleeding, your poo samples, and everything in between, then you're in trouble.
That's a combo, guys. You're not talking about poo.
Of coaching. I want to hear about your little flex and spicks and spacks and what the colors are and everything else. I want to know about your flow, and I need to know about everything in between, because it's all relevant to what we're trying to do when we're looking at aesthetic outcome, people. You know, and also if we're just trying to teach you about how not to freak out about fluctuations on a scale, because they happen hormonally every single month.
Thank you.
You're female.
Amen.
We can't help this. We bleed. It's a fact of life, right? So
hey, we're gonna fluctuate weight. We're gonna get moody. We're gonna cramp.
Exactly. So in your app, if you've been noting these things, right, and I know I do, and you know, for me, ovulation time, not even just at the end of cycle, but ovulation time can give me sometimes a slightly different mood, or a slightly different thought process, or a slightly different self-analysis. So, you know, like if my clients popped up and they've said the same thing for a few months in a row, but I'm noticing a trend, I can turn around and be like, hey, babe, you know what? It's not your mirror, it's not your eyes, and it's not the fact that you're fat, because you're actually freaking not. You've said the same thing. If you haven't noticed, but I've noticed because I'm noting it, but around the same time, every single month, we're having the same conversation where you're seeing one thing, but it's not reality. So then you can have a completely different conversation with someone, right? But it takes someone being comfortable enough to have that conversation with you in the first place. Exactly. So I guess the first thing that I'd like to raise about this, which I think is key to any relationship, I don't care who it is, parent, sibling, lover, partner, husband, wife, coach, honesty and vulnerability should be your two biggest words in your vocabulary if you want anything to be powerful, impactful, and successful. I don't care what it is, whether it's your body, your mind,
it has to be.
Or a relationship. They're the things, right? Honesty and 100% vulnerability. If you are not yet comfortable with vulnerability, that can be preventing you from having a conversation that could change your life.
Hey, I've been there. I think that one's a tough one, Allie. I think vulnerability is one of the things that you think is yourself as weak. You know, you look at yourself as a weak person. You think that you're not able to, you know, really you're buckling under pressure. That's kind of like where you look at yourself as, right? And I think that's really why being vulnerable is so powerful, because then you can look at yourself from a place of compassion, a place of understanding, like you said, like what we're going through in our cycle, understanding our ovulation, phase, and the luteal phase versus, obviously the actual, ovulation phase is different. So you wanting to really understand your body, you got to understand your hormones. You got to understand what the female body is capable of doing and what it's going to do when you don't want it to anyways. So it is very, very true. You've got to be vulnerable. You've got to be honest, and you've got to really be compassionate on these weeks
100%,
for yourself.
100%.
The mirror just,
when we think about this, Steph, for all of our listeners, because I want them to understand we're human. We've done some dumb shit, man. We probably do it on the daily still. And what's probably been your biggest thing when you think back on a situation with a coach that maybe you struggled with conversation wise, or maybe something, even if there's a scenario where you actually were capable of sitting in vulnerability and having a conversation that was like a bit of a holy crap moment, or is it something that you haven't yet done, but you're working on it and it's a goal of yours to achieve it?
I think that's that self-discovery part that we're all evolving every single year. And every year I've had a breakthrough. And I think that every year I've had a struggle that has been different, whether if that was putting myself out there. I know that was my first struggle. I couldn't put myself out there. I was very shy. I still kind of am. People that know me understand that I do actually get shy. I'm outgoing once I'm out there, but it is hard. It's hard for me to get going and get out there. And I think that's one of the things at the beginning stage for social media, it was difficult. And that was one of my first breakthroughs, was getting out there. Then secondly, not caring what people think. And I still think that that's one of the things that I still battle with, just because we are such a different persona now with, the evolving of the titles. And now you do have such a big spotlight on yourself. So I think that is probably one of my bigger challenges that still today, I probably do battle with. And I'll be honest, I think that sometimes spotlight can be, a blessing, but also a curse, just kind of like social media. You're just always judged, and I think that is something you have to overcome and really get out of your own head. And that is conversations. Back to what I said earlier, was you've got to talk to your own self before you can even talk to anybody else. You can't really talk to yourself and say like, girl, this is where your freaking downfall is and you're fucking up. You got to cut this shit out. You got to really, really find those things that you're failing at and you're lying to yourself, saying excuses. There's this other thing that I'm too busy with. And it's really just the fact that you're just too lazy to do this because it's hard to overcome that obstacle. So it's more about really trying for myself to even more so not care what everybody else thinks. I think it's harder than easier said than done.
I love
so that is on my end. And no, I haven't, I think, communicated really with anybody else. I guess all of you now.
I love that though. I love that though, because you'll find that this is a really common theme. It was even for me. And I think, and I've talked about this on other podcasts and in other interviews, that the moment where I felt like I stepped forward and it was an effortless process for me in so many facets of my life was the day where I went, what anyone thinks of me, no longer any of my business, and in the fuck it bin, right? And I just was not going to care about it anymore. And you're so right. And that went along with too, I'm not going to worry about judgment if I say something that's authentic and from the heart, because I'm going to feel better for having said it. I will gain something out of the back end, no matter what I'm receiving from it. And I'm going to choose to step forward better for it, right? So probably an example, and this loops into what you were saying too, about showing vulnerability and about not being perfect and about sharing it regardless socially. And I did this. Everyone might have, that has followed me, have remembered a situation. I was in 2019. It was about May, June. I was actually in Sydney at the time for work with EHP. I was working with Ben Bukowski, BPAC, and I sent him a message and said, bro, we need to get on a Skype because, everyone knows me. I'm high energy, high octane. I don't have low days. I'm not someone that's historically, had to battle with mental health issues from that perspective. I'm like anyone. I have days of lower levels of energy and motivation. Absolutely, definitely. But I've never had like clinical depression or anything like that. I had to get on a call with him because I had I was getting worried that I was, for the first time in my life, getting depressed, but I knew myself well enough and could analyze like what was going on in my life and go, no, you know what? Like, I don't think it is, because everything in life is good, you know? So I got on this Zoom call with him, and then in the actual hotel room, I recorded myself and put it on social media and said, hey guys, look, this is where I'm at. This is what's happening. Because I was coming into a show, which was actually a defending title, which I won. But I guess, you know, I had that moment of, you know, is this a thing for me? Is this something where I'm not even aware of it? And subconsciously, you know, I maybe have got stuff going on about the pressure of that, but it wasn't. So thank God, what it turned out to be was, and I shared this too, and I'm sharing this for a reason, because I'm going to talk about shit next. So, you know, here I am on this call with Ben, and I'm going, Ben, look, you know, bro, I like, and he's like, he's been my idol for as long as I can remember, right? So I'm having what would be classified as a conversation about weakness, which mental weakness too, with a guy that I revered. And I would never have done this with a previous coach ever, because would never have had that conversation, wouldn't have felt like I could, but with him, I totally could. And the weird thing is that this is a guy that I full respected and was at the top of like this pinnacle for me, right? So anyway, I got on the phone call with him and I said, bro, look, this is what's going on. I don't know what's going on. Like, I'm not an emotional person in the sense where I don't get weepy and teary, but I'm feeling it. Like, I've got no energy. I'm just sitting in this really like drained, but semi almost dark space where I was like,
like a depressing, place.
But it was really,
which is, I think, is a really good topic to be able to, you know, touch on. And I think that's actually something we will, you know, discuss, because so many humans just in general deal with depression, you know, 100%. And I think that is something, you know, 100%. Mental health is such an important topic that we'll definitely circle back around in a future episode. But there
is nothing wrong with it if you do. And there is nothing wrong with putting your hand up and saying, like I did it immediately. I need help. Like, what's going on? So anyway, we bantered backwards and forwards. We discussed all the physiological stuff. We discussed all the biofeedback. We ran through all the things. We had a really great coaching call. And at the end of it, I turned around to him and my view on it, because, you know, thank God, like I'm a completely established coach in my own right. So I could almost, you know, process things for myself as well. But I've got that coaching relationship with him to use that for a reason. So we're bouncing everything off each other. And I'm like, you know, I'm doing all of the things, and I'm deeper into my meditation, deeper into my relaxation stuff. Like, I was doing all the right stuff. And I said to him, so this is not right for me. And I said, there is something not right. I said, so I've had all my blood work done, showed him my panels, went, you know, like my hormones are great. Like, I don't understand this. My iron levels are good. I'm not low on iron. Like, as a nutritionist, I'm going through all in here. And then I said to him, you know, I'm in a good place here. My relationship's great. Like, my family's great. Like, there was nothing going on. Right. So I said to him, shit coming up, go and have a shit test. I said, I'm going to my naturopath, who's one of our experts that work with our team. She's our exclusive naturopath. I said, I'm asking her for a stool sample because there is something not right. And I believe it's going to have to come from my gut, but I need to have a test done. So anyway, I went and did the test. Guess what? Fucking it was. I did not have depression, and I was fine. And I knew I was. This was
your gut was,
well, hey. Then I had to give Ben another Zoom call and chat about my poo. It was so good, right? So here I am then with this, like, you know, this massive name and this massive profile. And anyone listening to this is going to be like, B-Pack and Ellie have talked about her shit. Great. You know, but look, I'm making a point with this. You need to be able to have these conversations with your bloody coach people.
And look, but not only talk about it, I think where you really hit it was the fact that you said, I could only talk to him. There's no other coach I previously could have ever been able to talk to. So you have to be comfortable enough and to have a relationship with this coach to be able to know you can open this conversation. Otherwise, it's not going to be successful. It's not going to be a successful conversation because you're not going to really dig in the realness.
Exactly. There was him and Paolo that I talked about it with, and that was it. Just those two people. But it was Ben that I initially raised it with because we were discussing all the stuff that was going on leading into, you know, that show. And anyway, it came back that what had happened was, it's so funny though, but I'm so glad that I'm so in tune with myself and beyond that grateful that I had no ego and I had no issue raising these things, right? But it got treated really quickly because I did this. So there is a big point to this. I did not procrastinate. I did not sit on something, and I did not hide my vulnerability out of fear for shame and embarrassment and prevent my performance and success. I did not do those things. And I'm so glad I didn't, because guess what it was?
We'd been in Sri Lanka in February. I'd picked up a little thing that you do, you put little parasites and bugs in those sorts of countries, evolving countries. And anyway, I had low stomach acid at the time. It had then turned into a gut dysbiosis. I had major parasite overgrowth of one particular chain, which is so nasty that, get this, my naturopath said to me, holy crap, Ellie, I know that you always do things to excess and you take everything to the highest limit you can. She goes, you've even done it when it comes to a bloody gut infection. She goes, this number is meant to be below 500. I had 25,000. 25,000. It was meant to be below 500. I had 25,000. She said to me, had I had continued untreated, that particular situation that was brewing and going on could have led to ulcers and cancer of my stomach.
Exactly.
Cancer of my stomach. And second to that, long-term systemic growth and overgrowth of these particular 4 different chains I had can lead to reproductive issues. Now, and is everyone listening to this? Like, wow, how do I have sat on something and swallowed my voice and been unable to communicate because I couldn't trust myself
to know that something's wrong,
to have that conversation and be open and be raw and be vulnerable and then share it with all of my social media with 0 shits given about anyone having, a thought process on it or an opinion. I did that and I cleared my health within 6 weeks. And not only that, but I actually developed a way stronger and more robust microbiome and gut after that anyway. But I learned so much and I took so much out of the power and the influence that can come from being in a raw and vulnerable state and in a really open dialogue with someone that was profound. And I have now, I took it into my own coaching. So I then started to proactively look for, and this is where I'm going to come into this, because I think this is important, the powerful C's of coaching, the 5 powerful C's of coaching. But I took it into, and I started to, I would see things and I would hear things and I'd pick up on undercurrents with clients and I'd be like, oi, 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 oi. And I'd start asking questions, and it's just open-ended questions and really, really, really powerful questions that allow for self-discovery. They're curious questions that open a dialogue where the client can have a bit of an aha moment, but they understand that you're recognizing something because you care. Yeah. And because you obviously know enough about them to pick up on something, right? So I started doing that, and then I started encouraging my clients. And then before you know it, I would be like, guys, don't sit on that. If we need to do a test on something, if you need to go shit in a cup, we're going to go do that, people. Exactly. And there is nothing to be ashamed of because I've done it. I'll share my pictures with you. Maybe not. But
okay, I'll take the
point being, the point being, from those moments, great things come, right? So, my biggest thing for our entire audience base here is don't be afraid to share your shit. Like quite literally, figuratively, and literally here, people. Share your shit. Share your shit. Get down, get nasty, get dirty, share it, open it up, let it all out, because great things will come.
On that note, if you don't know about stool and shit, right? Like literally, you've got to understand your gut to understand that you can be your own doctor when going to the bathroom, okay? You can assess your stool every single time, and it's going to tell you a symptom that your gut is undergoing. If you're even going to the bathroom, I know some people that tell me, they're like, it's been days. And I'm like, oh God, this is like new starting clients that I have like immediately red flag, just like you said, like you've got to do all of these questions. It's not just what's your goal? You want to lose weight, obviously you want to gain some muscle. It's way more beyond that. It's more about your hormones, your sleep, your gut, even your mindset. If your mindset is not where it needs to be, you are going to be in a very bad place going into a diet. I mean, so just let alone.
Let's have a look at that scenario for a minute with me, right? Had I have been someone else? And I had been like, okay, well, I'm just depressed. I'm going to go to the doctor. I'm going to get depression tablets. I'm going to go on tablets, and that will be screwing up my microbiome differently, right? I'm going to then not treat something that's going to be systemic that will lead to greater internal issues. I'm then going to make that about me and say that I failed this. I failed this prep. I failed this process. I failed my coach. I'm a failure. Yeah. Wow. When you just take that, everything I just said, and understand how quick of a succession those balls can roll into one another, which is what most people go through. What do I then do? Okay, well, I put it in the fuck it basket. It's too hard. I walk away from the whole experience. I still haven't treated my gut, still haven't treated my health, still haven't moved on from that situation. And then I just keep feeling worse and worse and worse. Then I'm eating, and I'm in this abusive relationship with food, and I'm then yo-yoing, and then I'm hating on myself even more. Fast forward 2 years, and I'm skinny fat, or I'm just fat, and I'm fucking miserable.
And you've got fucked up liver and fucked up kidneys. I'm being serious, because if that's what you do with the depressants and any other contraceptive, like that's just kind of what happens. And then I don't understand like birth control, and this will be another topic. I mean, we've got a lot of stuff we're going to talk about
out of this
podcast, you know, so it is definitely going to be a you know, more secluded about, you know, cycle and about birth control and how all of that takes a, you know, toll into our, you know, our hormonal balance. But it's more about really making sure that you do have way more in tuneness with your symptoms, just your everyday symptoms.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Queen Divas, Queens of Fitness podcast. Make sure you follow us on Instagram at Queen Divas Pod, on Twitter at Queen Divas 4, and follow our hosts on Instagram, Alicia at Alicia Gowans _WBFF Pro, and Steph at Stephanie Ayala 7. See you all next week.